Hello, and welcome to the Civil Talk podcast. I'm your host, Tapasio Althaus. If you're new to the show, this is where we explore civility and social emotional learning with esteemed guests, expert insights, and practical advice to help people navigate the world. Today, I'm thrilled to welcome Richard Hua to the podcast. Richard is the worldwide head of Epic at Amazon Web Services and the founder of EQ at Amazon, a community of over 50,000 members dedicated to emotional intelligence, making it the largest employee-based community at Amazon. His impressive achievements also extend to launching Amazon's Culture of Innovation program in the San Francisco Bay Area and mentoring high-performing teams. His EQ training programs have reached over 250,000 people globally, empowering their professional and personal success. It's an honor to have him here today to share his insights on emotional intelligence, innovation, and the role of civility in shaping the future of work and leadership. Richard, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm really thrilled and honored to be able to be with you here today.
Likewise. So we'd love to hear more about EQ at Amazon and Epic. They are truly powerful initiatives, and we'd love to hear you talk a little about them, what inspired you to create them, and just how has it transformed the culture at Amazon?
Yeah. So the first thing I'll say is I do not speak on behalf of Amazon. I'm speaking for myself as an employee. But what I want to do is actually start with a bit of the story of my own sort of development, and that will lead to where I am today. So, as you already mentioned, I have the privilege of serving as the worldwide head of our Epic Leadership Program, and Epic actually is an effort to upskill leaders in emotional and social intelligence, so that they can lead with greater empathy, purpose, inspiration, and connection. Thus the acronym EPIC. And the numbers actually just came out. We added them all up from last year, and the number is now over 500,000 people that we've been able to engage and impact and train. About 400,000 people internally at Amazon and about 100,000 outside with our customers and our partners and amazing people. So that's the current state. Let me sort of go all the way back to my childhood. I was born in Taiwan, and I came to America when I was about 4 years old. And let's just say I had basically no emotional intelligence, very socially awkward, didn't speak English, and I had attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, ADHD. And so those three things were real challenges. And it made my childhood kind of unpleasant. And, I faced bullying and racism, grew up in, the Midwest United States, not a whole lot of people who looked like me. And I had a hard time adjusting. And so because of these sort of negative emotional experiences like disappointment or anger or resentment or loneliness, I decided to turn off all my emotions. And my goal became to be a robot. And then I figured out I was actually pretty smart. So I thought, well, let me be a genius robot. That would be my goal in life. And it worked out really well for a while. I got straight A's in high school. I got a perfect score on the SAT. I got into every college I applied to, went to UC Berkeley, got a degree in electrical engineering, computer science. And my genius robot plan was going really well until I did one thing that really screwed it up. I got married. And my wife really didn't care about the genius part, did not like the robot part. She really wanted this thing like empathy, emotional connection, understanding. So I thought, okay, maybe I need to work on this. And then instead of directly going into engineering, I actually became a missionary and an evangelist. And I actually served in the Philippines for like 3 years as a missionary, and then here in the San Francisco Bay Area for a couple of decades after that. So from both a professional and a personal perspective, realized that, I needed to work on the social emotional part. And so I really worked hard. I read tons of books, got a lot of mentoring, took courses, and practiced and dramatically increased in those skills over time to the point that I became actually pretty good at that. And people started coming up to me saying, can you coach me on these skills? From new managers to C-level executives. And then when I moved back into the corporate world, I brought training to Oracle and then to AWS about 8.5 years ago. And what I saw was this really interesting gap in opportunity. There were a lot of really, really smart people, super high IQ, many of them much smarter than I was or am. And yet the EQ had varying degrees of proficiency. And what I realized was I could really make a difference. I could really help my colleagues and people around me be happier, healthier, and more successful, and in
Mhm.
the process also be kinder as they develop these emotional social skills. So I wound up delivering talks at Amazon just to whoever would listen.
Mhm.
And then what happened was I got a chance to deliver at our sales kickoff in 2019, and that was a seminal moment because what they did was they put me in a room for like 100 people because it was kind of a strange topic, right? Totally off the beaten path, EQ. And the organizers weren't sure if anybody would show up. But the day before the talk, they called me up and said, "Oh my goodness, so many people tapped on wanting to attend your session. We're going to move you to a bigger room." And they put me in a room for 1,000 people. And
Mhm.
it wound up being standing room only and the highest rated breakout session for the entire event. So that actually brought
Wow.
EQ to the stage at Amazon. It was not something that anybody had really talked about in any serious way before that. But the fact that so many people showed up or were interested really was a great indicator. Okay, this is a resonant topic here. And
Mhm.
so what happened was people started coming up and saying, "How can I help? I love this topic. I want to be able to bring more of it to my team, my organization." So we wound up having dinner together, talking about this idea of starting an EQ champions group. And that was about 12 people in Chicago. And now it's grown to over 700 EQ champions who now bring emotional intelligence skills across all parts of Amazon, and they help really lead a community of now actually 70,000 people all across different parts of Amazon. And they're all passionate about practicing, developing, and spreading emotional intelligence. So
Yeah.
that's sort of my blurb about how it's grown over time, and it's been absolutely amazing. I mean, I really believe in that idea of start small but think big. And if
Mhm.
you build it and it really has value and people understand the really positive impact you can have on them and the people around them, if you build it, they will come. And that's
Right.
certainly what's happened at Amazon.
Yeah, first of all, I want to say you're also such a great speaker. I've watched a few of your other podcasts, and it's really amazing that you were able to, learn about EQ, but on top of that, you had these other skills of EQ as well, and just are very charismatic and a good speaker. And I think what you're saying right now, build it and they will come. You've built a lot for yourself, in experience and knowledge and personability. So first of all, I just want to say how extraordinary it is that you were able to sort of find a sort of gap and use all of your skills to create a new pathway in Amazon. And that's, if that's not just the definition of innovation, I don't know what is. So first, I want to say how extraordinary that is.
Thank you.
But also, in your view, I want to hear, teaching emotional intelligence and EQ can sometimes be, a feat for some people. I just want to know, so what's a big barrier for emotional intelligence being universally adopted in corporate culture, and how do you specifically tackle that?
Yeah, no, I love that question because that is something I have thought about and worked on in my team as well for really many years.
Mhm.
So the biggest challenge is lack of awareness and skepticism.
Mhm.
Right? We live in a world that is, from an educational perspective, very, very highly indexed on IQ. All right, reading, writing, arithmetic, history, you name it, right? It's all the IQ stuff. And we have almost no EQ, right? I mean, we're lucky if there's a K through 12 or a college program that teaches emotional social skills. And yet all the research says that those are the things that help you be successful long term. I mean, after your first job out of college, IQ, you're smart enough.
Right.
It's all these abilities like cognitive control, grit, resilience, influence, empathy, inspiration, right? All these things that allow you to actually distinguish yourself. And yet, the education system is really not sort of caught up to that yet. Though there are people like Mark Brackett over at Yale and others who are really doing a lot to try to bring that more to the system. But so at Amazon and really at many of the places I go to, this idea of EQ, like what is that? I've been successful because of IQ. Or emotions. What is all this emotional fluffy stuff? That's a bunch of crap. And that's literally what I face because people just aren't aware. And so the key for me has been empathy.
Mhm.
It has not been going to people and saying, "I love EQ. It's awesome. You should hear it." That
Mhm.
and $4 will get you a latte, right? I mean, no one cares about that. Empathy means, hey, Would you like to be happier? Would you like to manage your stress more effectively? Would you
Right.
like to be more successful? What are the pains and challenges that you're facing right now, whether professionally or personally? I think I have some things that might help you with that. And so approaching it from the other person's perspective has
Mhm.
really been really the key, right? And what I found is as I go all over the world, hundreds of thousands of people, and I ask, hey, anybody here would like to be happier, healthier, more successful? I mean, who doesn't raise their hand, right? Literally 100 out of 100 people want those. And then I say, well, here are the skills that will help you to do that. And then
Mhm.
I work with a lot of senior leaders, C-level executives of all types. And I don't go to them and say, hey, I've got some EQ. I think it'll really be great. I ask them $1 billion question, which I learned from a good friend, Bill Dwayne, who was the former superintendent of well-being and sustainable performance at Google. So he and I are friends, and he has helped consult with the Epic program, AWS. He said, go to leaders and ask this question. What business problems could be solved with greater connection and understanding? Don't ask them, would you like a empathy training or an EQ training? I mean, most people will say yes, but then it, always gets deprioritized. What business problems could be solved with greater connection and understanding? Oh, well, attracting talent or retention or employee engagement or,
Mhm.
helping high performers really want to stay here or group dynamics and helping silo teams work together. They're going to come up with a giant laundry list. And then you go, well, I believe I have some things that can help you with the problems you're facing. So that empathy has been a real key.
Right. Yeah, so measuring the impact of that as well, is there a sort of metric that you look at that gauges that sort of success? I think having these conversations is one thing, but also, what a lot of people struggle with, especially EI people, is getting that information to stick and to actually consistently make progress.
Yeah.
Um, so do you see that, with your consistent teaching and help and keynote speaking, that there is a measure of success to coincide with that?
Yeah. So the answer is absolutely yes. We are a data driven company, and most companies I work with are data driven as well. So you need to make sure you have good data.
Right.
And I will say one interesting thing people have said, hey, we're really data driven. What's all this emotional, fluffy stuff have to do with it? And one thing I do say is emotions are data, and they're really important data points. Right. Like,
Mhm.
for instance, if you go into a meeting with a colleague, your manager, a customer, and their facial expression is this versus this, you probably want to approach it a little differently, right? I mean,
Right.
that's an important data point. So first thing. The second thing is the data depends on what that business is looking for and what is actually important. So there's not
Mhm.
one size fits all. Well, we've proven that people's emotional intelligence grew by 28% over 6 months. So what? I mean, even if you can prove that happened in some kind of scientifically validated way, the business leader still is like, well, I don't care. I'm trying to increase my revenue. I'm trying to
Right.
improve my innovation, right? I'm
Right.
trying to improve my retention. So it depends on the organization. And so what we do is we essentially, again, go ask the question, what business problems can be solved? And those are the things we strive to measure. Sometimes it might just be a survey before and after a training, or it might be 6 months later about a specific thing, right? I'm working with a particular customer where psychological safety is really important to them. So they came up with, simple questions where they basically, we helped deliver some epic trainings. Then we actually trained a bunch of their people to deliver it internally. And now what they do is they get psychological safety rating from a team before the training. Then they
Right.
do it after the training, after 3 months, after 6 months to see has it improved. And they've had quantifiable increases in those psychological safety measures after leaders have taken that training. So for
Right.
them, that was really important. So that's what
Right.
they measured. At Amazon, fascinatingly, one of the important metrics has just been the number of people who've taken the training and gotten involved in the EQ community. Right? It
Right.
started with a few people. Now it's like 70,000. And it includes people all the way up to our most senior leaders who are reporting into our CEO. So, that sort of widespread adoption and support of it really is a powerful metric that allows
Right.
people to know, hey, this is important and this makes a difference.
Right. I love that you're really just trying to go in and teach leaders and give them the sort of skills and tools to help the people on their teams. And I think that's really important. We try to do the same thing at Civil Talk, where, we try to work with faculty, staff, universities instead of taking over. We don't
Yeah.
want to feel like we're impeding on anyone's business structure or on, their world, and I think it's really, and that's plays into empathy. We want to work with communities, we want to work with teams and give them the tools to teach people in their communities and on their teams.
Yeah.
And
Well,
with
and if I
go
could just say one thing too. I know this is a very smart and academically oriented audience. One of the challenges that I've seen in working with all types of people is that knowledge and data and all that IQ stuff is important, but the
Mhm.
one skill that I think is actually just as, if not more important, is sales. You have to be good at sales because you're essentially selling an idea.
Right.
And it doesn't matter how smart you are, doesn't matter how much you know. If you're not good at sales, no one's going to care. And when I give presentations early on, one of the things that I actually got trained in was I would give a presentation and there would be two people in the back, and one had a sign that says, "So what?" And the other has a sign that says, "Who cares?" And so as I'm talking, and if they're losing me, they just hold up the sign, "So what?" And the
That's
other person, "Who cares?" Sometimes they're both up. I'm like, "Oh my goodness, I'm losing people here."
Oh,
And
it's funny. I
sometimes
like
and sometimes we're like, "Well, I really care, but doesn't mean anybody else does." And so
yeah,
sales is so powerful. And I'd
right.
say that is why I've been able to actually spread EQ not only to Amazon but our customers, because it's certainly the knowledge base and the expertise, but you got
Mhm.
to couple that with sales skills.
Yeah, something that you said on another podcast, that I really liked. There was a book called Give and Take by Adam Grant that you
Yes.
had mentioned, and you said there were three categories of people. There are givers, takers, and matchers. And you said that the most successful people professionally are givers. And in essence, I think salespeople are givers. It's like, and you mentioned, the giving has to be strategic.
Yeah.
And salespeople are just super strategic in their giving. What can I give you? And hopefully, what I give you is greater than, in some regard, than what you give me, and we can sort of like do that consistently over time.
Yeah.
But I love that, and I think that's so true. Giving to that community and like being a salesperson, I think is really important.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's kind of just what we're all in.
Yeah.
But tying it into, I don't know if you deal a lot with, because here at Civil Talk, we deal with civility. And in our model, we talk about civility as the cornerstone of emotional intelligence. It transforms empathy into action, respect into connection. It's the actionable thing that we can do to sort of implement our emotional intelligence skills. And I want to know, how do you differentiate between fostering, emotional intelligence and civility, and the risk of encouraging sort of conformity? How do you strike a balance between, having respectful dialogue and also wanting to make sure that people aren't conforming to what's around them in their team
Yeah.
culture?
Yeah. It's a profound question because when I think about emotional intelligence skills, they are skills, right? I mean, literally, you can develop them, and I'm a living testament to that. Having had very little to none as a younger person and developing over time. And I think of them as the meta skills that create certain outcomes, right? So civility is an outcome; it's an output.
Right.
Um, you know, inclusion, equity, diversity are outputs, right? And so when people try to focus on the output without the input, then it becomes a bit of a exercise in futility, right?
Right.
And so EQ is really the inputs, and it really begins with self-awareness
Right.
because you can't really treat someone else the way that is civil or empathetic or whatever word you use that's sort of a positive, without first understanding yourself and how your emotional state is, how you're coming across, what's going on inside to some degree, right? And so, I really believe that these meta skills, again, self-awareness, self-management, stress management being a big one, that, I often say stress is what makes otherwise kind, friendly, helpful people into kind of ogres. I mean, that's really what happens. And so we sort of go past our stress threshold, we become a different person, right? And
Right.
that's usually not the empathetic, civil person that we maybe ideally want to be. So those things work together. And it's interesting because, Daniel Goleman, who's one of the sort of godfathers of emotional intelligence, and I have the good fortune of actually collaborating with and working with it. He said that when you put all the EQ skills together, he believes that you come up with empathic concern, or also known as compassion. Right? Is I understand you, I care about what you care about to some degree, and I
Mhm.
generally want to help you. Right? I want to do something good. And so that needs to be, yes, balanced with the idea of, look, I've got my own opinions, I've got my own thoughts, I've got my own perspectives. I want to respect and listen to your perspective. Doesn't mean I agree, but we
Right.
can respectfully have a conversation from varying points of view. So that ability to take someone else's and seek someone else's perspective, and yet also be aware enough to hold your own and then have that conversation. That is in many ways, putting it all together and very difficult,
Yeah.
right? Because our amygdala's going and our threat detection system, we got all this stuff going on in our own head. And so you have to kind of really practice those skills to be able to have that. And
Yeah.
so I believe that these are the meta skills that have the output of things like civility and perspective seeking and empathy.
Right. It's really a respectful curiosity. It's having curiosity without a sort of judgment or taking things personally. And like you say, it's really hard to not take something personally when
Yeah,
someone is diametrically opposed to your opinion. It really, I mean, even as adults and, 40, 50, 60-year-olds, it's a skill that you are trying to uphold,
yeah,
and every interpersonal skills within your teams. But I think discussions like this are important because it really brings, those skills to the forefront.
yeah,
If you're having trouble with team members, just know that a lot of the problems and issues might come back to this, might come back to a lack of self-awareness on your part, a lack of empathy. I think every single problem I've had with another person have always come back to this in some
yeah,
regard, you
yeah,
know, because it's not about right or wrong or whatever. It's about meeting in the middle,
yeah, yeah, yeah,
and compromise.
yeah, yeah. There's there's this really interesting thing, right? Like, what happens with a lot of people when it comes to any kind of sort of heightened emotional state is that they don't actually know what's happening to them. And because we haven't had training, we kind of freak out a little bit, right? Or we don't respond in the best way,
Yeah.
right? Like and the analogy I kind of use is, imagine the first time you got hiccups, right? You're like, what is happening to me? My body's doing this weird thing, and am I going to die? Am I sick? Right? And then you eventually realize, it just kind of happens now and then. You get too much air in your stomach or something, and then it's like you get a practice of dealing with it, getting rid of them. And it's kind of funny because the same thing happens when we face a perceived threat. But most people actually are never trained to go, okay, I'm perceiving this as a threat. I can sort of take the threat out of it and think more helpfully about the situation, kind of reframe it. Because
Right.
when someone disagrees with us, our most primal parts of our brain, the amygdala and all that, actually detects it as a bit of a threat. They are threatening my, ideology or belief or maybe my identity, whatever it may be. And so we kind of, we regard it kind of like almost like a saber-toothed tiger.
Mhm.
And we have to go, okay, this is not a saber-toothed tiger. This is just someone who disagrees with my position on something. It's not about me, it's about the topic. And so literally being able to do that in real time takes practice, but the beginning of it is awareness, right? And so when people at least know what's happening to them, they can have the power to do something about it. And I found that to be actually really helpful, whether I'm talking to a colleague or my teenagers or my spouse. It has really made a huge difference.
Yeah, knowledge is power. The more you can sort of determine what's going on, the easier it is to be non-reactive. You
Yeah.
know, um,
Yeah.
I'd love to hear your thoughts on AI, and Amazon has been really at the forefront of AI-driven innovation. And how do you see emotional intelligence integrating into AI? What are the pros and the cons and the pitfalls? What are some what is your experience with that?
Yeah. This for a full answer would require about a couple of hours. But I know we don't have that, so I'll give you the short version. Um, there's kind of like multiple things happening with AI, right? One is successfully adopting it when it's so rapidly changing and there's all this ambiguity and uncertainty and just kind of wildness around
Mhm.
it. And then the other facet of it is preparing for an AI powered future because it is here and it is going to be even more and more. So there's sort of successfully leveraging it, adopting it, employing it in your business, which of course AWS does a lot to help customers and partners with. And then there's sort of just, well, what am I going to do with my career and my job and all that? So, on the first piece, this idea of being able to deal with a very ambiguous environment is something that I really go around and help executives and all types of practitioners learn. Because yes, do you need the right large language models and inference training and all that? Yes, there's a lot of technical things that obviously are table stakes. And you also need to understand that we're operating in a complex or chaotic environment, which means that no amount of looking at the past can answer your questions for the future. You're not going to be able to go, well, the last time there was a massive AI revolution or even a revolution similar to this. And so we have to experiment. We have to
Right.
learn as we go. We have to be in a constant learn it all, not a know it all mode. And we have to be comfortable with things not working. Some might call that failure, others might call that experiments, but realizing that this sort of rapid iteration and rapid experimentation and environments where people can disagree, have psychological safety, we can hear all the voices so we can come with the right answers that have the higher probability. It's not even right answer, but highest probability of something might succeed
Mhm.
is a big part of it because there actually are no right answers. There's only evolving answers as we go.
Right.
And so that means stress management. That means leading in a way where there's high trust,
Mhm.
there's high amounts of psychological safety. There's intelligent failures that are allowed to happen, at the right scale. And then there's also what I call generative disagreement, right? Where you're generating the best ideas because you are respectfully disagreeing and talking to each other and being able to leverage the diversity of thought that's there. So those are all really important, along with all the sort of technical specs and IQ stuff. And
Right.
the reality is executives all the world are kind of freaking out a bit, right? And have been, right? I had the good fortune of being at a session with Brene Brown a little while back, and she said, "I have never seen so many scared CEOs as I see today. Like they're literally freaking out because they know they need to jump on the AI bandwagon and not sure what to do with it, right? So this idea of the making good decisions and being calm and
Yeah.
rapid iteration is important. So that's the adoption part, right? Where EQ and AI fit together. The other part is developing your own social emotional skills because they are only going to become more and more important in the days to come.
Right.
Right? I mean, the reality is everything that can be automated will be automated.
Mhm.
So where does that leave you and me?
Right. No,
Right?
exactly. Yeah,
It leaves
exactly.
us with a very unique value add of human skills. In fact, McKinsey recently had a study where they basically predicted that by 2030, up to 50% of work activities will be automated.
Right.
50%. It's interesting. Microsoft puts out a work trends report every year, and they said that the three top skills that are needed for this AI powered future are analytic judgment, no surprise. And then the second was emotional intelligence. The third was flexibility.
Mhm.
Cognitive flexibility, which actually involves a lot of EQ as well. So
Mhm.
really, two out of the three are squarely in this social emotional realm. So to actually be a valuable employee for the future, learn the AI skills, understand how to use it. Obviously, that's just table stakes, but really double down on those social emotional skills, and you will have outsized opportunities. Because again, that's really where we're going to uniquely add value as human beings.
Right. Game on, robots. It's like we have better emotional intelligence than I Robot, I Sam over here. It's just like now it's going to be just a huge competition between humans and robots on who can have more empathy, and I'm kind of here for that.
Yeah.
That's but that that brings in a whole question of ethics, and making sure that AI aligns with these human values of making sure that AI is working for humans and not replacing humans, and
Yeah.
ethical standards, and and you're right, this is really the beginning of AI, and I'm curious to see where that goes, and if humans and corporations and businesses will be like, no, this is where people, flesh and blood, can step in, and we can use the skills, even though an AI can do it.
Yeah.
Do corporations and businesses have the emotional strength to say no? To take and not be reactive, even though an AI tool can take over, but
Yeah.
delegating it to a human, and a big concern is ethics. And I talk about that in my time, it's huge in Amazon, I'm sure as well too.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I'm sure, are these discussions you're having with your teams, and how do you even verbalize that?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it's interesting. I have the good fortune of working at one of the most influential and innovative and just amazing companies in the world. I've been here 8.5 years. I love it. And I do believe that because of this innovative DNA, the Epic program was able to actually be birthed and scale the way it has. I don't know if this would have happened at any other company. Probably not, because I think Amazon is uniquely positioned to pay attention to wild ideas that might actually have benefit. And so when it comes to the AI topic, um, there's a few things. Number one is we can all influence it, whether big or small. I think it's important to understand we're all empowered in some way, and we may not be the sole decision maker, sitting with the button at the top, to be able to deploy AI or whatever. But we can all influence it, and so we need to leverage that influence for what we believe is good and ethical and aligned,
Right.
right? I'm grateful because really, again, I'm speaking for myself. I'm not the corporate spokesperson for Amazon, but I will say what I see is there's a high degree of value and concern and attention to things such as ethics. We have entire people dedicated just to doing that, right? To things like security, big, 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 big issue, right? Because there are plenty of bad actors out there, so making sure that it's secure is really important. Because you can make it as ethical as you want, and if some bad actors get a hold of it, I mean, you're toast, right? So those two go along with each other. And of course, we have a lot of influence both B2B and B2C with all the amazing AI products that we have out there. And again, I get to work with a lot of colleagues who really do care about this, right? And the idea is that AI would augment human flourishing, right? However you define that, and one of the things that is important is that relationships, right? That my position and the position of a lot of people I get to work with is that whatever AI comes out, it will become more and more empathetic and emotional intelligent, and already has, right? The sort of social emotional reasoning. And yet, the belief is that it should augment human relationships, not replace. Now,
Right.
there are others out there who think differently, and it's a little scary, frankly. But I believe that AI can really help people, and yeah, it can actually support us. It can help us. It can help us achieve our goals. Even be there for us, maybe at times where we need just a little help. And the ultimate goal should be that it connects us or reconnects us with
Right.
humans, because at the end of the day, it's a tool, and that tool hopefully can actually again help us with the flourishing. So if you understand, the PERMA model, the PERMA plus four, kind of all that, right? Relationships are a big part of that, and at the end of the day, AI will never be able to truly replace a human because it does not embody things like a human does. And
Right.
if it can be a tool that helps us with that, then great.
Yeah. I think, AI is only going to be as ethical as the people who are running it, and so you really have to build a fortress around it and protect it. And I really love that idea of it being a two-way street,
Yeah,
between AI and people. And it's like you really have to give into it what you expect that output to be. And it's a really you have to have ethics too. And I really love that there are I didn't even think about that in this situation. There are whole departments to ethics within AI. And that is really important, that you choose people who are honorable, in that sense. And how do it's tough. Like, how do you even measure that? Sometimes you can just tell through human interactions, but I think it's really important to just hire people who have that sort of sense of ethics.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, and I mean, we're coming to a close, but I'd like to hear just sort of what your opinion is on the future of emotional intelligence. Emotional intelligence has been around for quite a long time, but it's been pretty recent that we have sort of slapped terms onto things that we've been experiencing for a long time and really have been integrating it further into our day to day. What do you think the future of EI looks like in businesses and corporations for the future?
Yeah. I envision a future where billions of people actually are learning, practicing, and deploying emotional intelligence just as much as they employ their IQ on a regular basis. I really do believe it will make the world happier, healthier, kinder, and
Yeah.
also help people achieve the goals that they're really trying to achieve. And
Yeah.
that is my goal. My personal mission is to actually bring emotion skills to a billion people through human to human interaction and through technology merged together to be able to help people develop and actually practice these skills. I've got a 500,000 and on my way, so I got a little work to do. But there has been no sort of large scale um, sort of effort that has really done that in mass, right, to so many people, and I hope that through the opportunities that I have, both where I am and then with the customers that I get to work with. I believe also, emotional intelligence is a set of skills and an idea whose time has really come now. And we've got these macroeconomic things or just sort of macro geo things that are happening, right? That is really making us realize more and more the social emotional part is more important than ever. AI, we've already talked about, right? But things like a new generation coming into the workforce, globalization of most companies where now you have employees all over the different parts of the world. You have to be able to know how to have empathy and engage with different cultures, different backgrounds. Hybrid work,
Mhm.
and really, again, the pandemic, we're still dealing with the after effects of that, even though it seems like it's foggy in our distant sort of mirror. Like engagement levels are lower than ever in 10 years, burnout levels are higher than ever. I mean, the human experience still requires these things, and more people are paying attention to it. And
Right.
so I'm really grateful again that I work at a company that really values it and has decided to support this kind of work. And then beyond that, share it with our customers, right? Because we do believe in trying to make a positive impact with the things that we have. So I look forward to it over the next however many years it takes to be able to reach billions. I believe that it will become a regular staple in people's education, and
Mhm.
then as they go into the corporate world, something that they learn because really is the key to personal happiness and success, and then being able to help others experience those same things.
Thank you, Richard, for that. I really appreciate you being on the podcast. I'm sure you're going to be helping many more people. And for a lot of the listeners tuning in, I think they're going to look towards your stuff if they haven't already and seek mentorship as well to some regard. But
Yeah,
thank you so much for being here with us today.
absolutely. It's been a pleasure. Thank you so much for the opportunity to be on your podcast. I really do hope it helps a lot of people. Have a great rest of your day.
Thank you. Thank you so much for tuning into this episode of the Civil Talk podcast. If you found this conversation insightful, don't forget to subscribe and share. It really helps us reach more people who are passionate about civility and social emotional learning. Until next time, remember, stay kind, stay curious, and I'll see you on the next episode of Civil Talk podcast.